Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we are focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is Kirsten Chalmers. Kirsten is a psychologist and the founder of Point Zero Cellars, where she works to raise awareness for those looking to take a break from alcohol. While her company is based out of Australia, and the majority of our listeners here are in the US, we do still have some listeners out in the Australia area. The message she sends, as far as I'm concerned, has no borders and knows no bounds. So with that, welcome to the show, Kirsten. I'm glad to have you on.
Thanks, Scott. I'm very pleased to be here and I appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the listeners who may not be familiar with you and your background, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, just quickly, I guess I live in Melbourne, Australia, but I originally come from South Africa. So I headed out here in my late 20s and just loved the country and decided this was a good place to have kids. So hubby and I have got two beautiful girls. They are now 14 and 16. And yeah, just have enjoyed being here. So it's really lovely.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and I haven't had the opportunity to make it down that way, but from what
You
I've
should.
heard, it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm looking forward to making it out there one of these days. So, and for the listeners, the reason why I asked Kirsten to be on the show today is because I know there are a lot of us in the military and the veteran community who enjoy having a drink with friends every now and again, which isn't a problem in and of itself. But there are some of us who find ourselves drinking too much, maybe as a coping mechanism, or the camaraderie of our friends might be what we're actually looking for, but we don't know how to socialize without alcohol and things like that. So I love the idea of an alcohol-free beverage and this type of thing, which seems to be gaining some traction nowadays. And I wanted Kirsten on to the show to tell us a little bit more about it. So I want to dive into your story a little bit and how you got involved with the alcohol-free beverages that you work with now. What led you to taking a break from alcohol?
Yes, a long history with alcohol. Let me start there. That's probably something we do have in common. So in terms of listenership, yeah, I guess I was really started like pretty average 15-year-old back in the day. Drinking was kind of absolutely required for a good time. So I was a smoker, I was a drinker, I was partying at 15. My family, we had barbecues and they were partying. So if I wasn't partying myself, then I certainly was watching my folks party. And there was just no way you could do that without alcohol. And then, of course, in my career, I quickly learned that alcohol had its function too. So very early on, I think I got my first management role at 23, and I can squarely accredit that to standing at the bar. It happened to be a catering company, so there was a bar. And just standing at the bar Friday nights, you get to talk to the CEO. You don't normally get to talk to him or access him. So I really learned that alcohol was a great tool. And I can't say I've had huge issues with alcohol. I mean, I obviously did binge drinking when you're young. You don't even consider that a problem, really, do you? I mean, that's also normalized until the beautiful COVID hit. And so just to give you a bit of background too, in terms of my career, I'm a psychologist and I work with kids. So autism, ADHD, all those types of things, lots of work at schools, but also in private practice. And my big tool was a little dog called Nugget. And Nugget didn't transfer awfully well onto telehealth, which was what we were then forced to do. So I tried really hard to keep my kids engaged on the screen, but that lasted about good 10 minutes and they were really fading off. And I just thought, no, look, I'm actually probably not providing much for my clients here. Let me just take a break from work because COVID will pass. We all thought that would happen, or at least maybe I did. I thought 6 months will be good. No problems, of course. So anyway, I took a bite of my break and I thought, okay, well, since I'm taking a break, I can hardly drink because I'm stressed, because that was always a great excuse. Oh, it's been a hard day, 5 o'clock rolls on, let me have a drink. Well, that excuse kind of went. And unfortunately, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so soon enough, I was actually starting to drink at 3, and hubby and I would polish off 2 bottles of wine by the end of the night, and that became a habit too. And I just had a look at this and I thought, nah, this is just not really good. I mean, I'm not functioning, but am I functioning at my best? And so I'm the kind of person, I do everything my way. And so I was going to just give myself a little experiment and took a year off. I decided dry July, which is pretty common here, or I think you guys know Feb fast. Those are great, but they're 1 month. You can't really learn much from that. So I took a year off and yeah, I learned heaps. I learned heaps about myself. Learned that it did have a massive effect on my sleep, on my health, on my energy levels, on my ability to manage stress, manage kids. It was really probably the best thing I've ever done. And of course, the year rolled past and it was like, okay, Kirsten, now you've got to step back into work. And I was like, well, telehealth is still around, not loving that idea. So, all inspired. I don't do much by halves. I decided, do you know what? I love this product. My husband's an import. How do I contribute to this space? There's obviously lots of distillers here locally doing their thing. I can't suddenly just magically create a great drink. So I'll just leverage off my skills and my contacts and I will import. So I went back to South Africa, not physically, obviously, but back to my roots in terms of reaching out to wineries and found some wineries that did non-alc brands, obviously tested them and loved them. So yeah, I guess I just decided to bring non-alcs in and you just become more and more involved in the whole space. And now I think I'm at the space where I'm combining psychology and importing. So I spend a lot of time talking to people about non-alcs. It's a great place to do it. You don't have to sit in psychology rooms to have the conversation. You don't have to have a problem to have the conversation. You can speak to everyone. I was recently at a trade show. Anyone and everyone is kind of just interested to hear about this new space, as you mentioned. So yeah, it's just been awesome.
Yeah, and for me, it's an interesting space. It just seems like there are so many new options that are out there as far as non-alcoholic beverages are concerned, and I feel like it's just really an awareness thing, which is partially why I want you to be on the show, is so that we can raise some awareness so that people, when they do go out with friends, they realize, hey, there are other options there. I don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
do shots at the bar or have
Yeah.
all the alcoholic options that are out there. And there are other things if they choose to go that route. So, and with your background in psychology, I'd like to talk a little bit about the relationship between alcohol and mental health and how they feed into each other and how all of that works, whether it's as it relates to self-medication or as a coping mechanism, how it affects your sleep and all these other types of things.
Well, I guess just a couple of things before we get onto that. I just wanted to mention you're right about wanting to make it something that's an option. I think one of the biggest challenges, and certainly with me with teenagers, is I knew that when I grew up, there wasn't an option. You couldn't be social. You had to be the nerd. If you were standing there with your Coca-Cola, you were totally the nerd. And I didn't want that option to be there for my kids. So yes, it's just awesome that you can actually walk in. Literally, some of the bottles you'd have to squint at to see that they were non-alc because they're just not designed to look like boring non-alc drinks. So yeah, super excited about that. As to the psychology, I think we normalize drinking a whole lot. And the bottom line is that it's a depressant. I think sometimes we really forget that. And it's something that we shouldn't forget. I work in the space where anxiety and depression are massive. It doesn't matter whether you're working with a teenager or their parent. Most people, there's a level of anxiety and stress to life regardless. And sometimes we don't realize that what we're doing is really part of it. So as we have more and more reliance on numbing out, and I think there's a brilliant book called The Dopamine Nation, and I forget the writer right now, sorry about that. It's all about our excesses and our need to have a rush and our need to break away from all the stresses that we have. And so alcohol has always been really normalized, but the downsides have not. It is a toxin, it is a carcinogenic, and it is a depressant. And so it absolutely has an effect on your daily life. And I think that's what I learned in that year off. It's great to know from a psychology point of view that alcohol, it's 20 minutes in your system, and yes, it has an awesome numbing effect, but after that, it drops. And so it does cause your depression to kick in. And I think, yeah, we just need to be more aware of it. I don't know that I've prepared a psychology as such course or I guess background on that. I just think it's as simple as saying, if I'm not feeling great, how much of that is due to alcohol? And you can only know that if you take some time off. You cannot know whether you are depressed because you have a depressive disorder or whether you actually are contributing to it yourself. You cannot know that without trying it.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that I was trying to make with that question is that alcohol is something that could lead to depression if
Mm.
you are using it more and more and more, and you find yourself using it to achieve that numbing effect that you.
Well, actually, even again, I think it's glossed over. It doesn't just contribute to depression. It is a depressant. It actually depresses the body, right? So if you are calling it numbing out, that's kind of very, very small, I guess, gain in the total depressing effect that it has on your body. And so your body doesn't like that. Your body likes to come back to a state of balance. And so what then happens is it introduces chemicals that then make you feel anxious. If you know that feeling where you wound up but tired at the same time, often after drinking, or you have that highly anxious feeling when you've woken up having had a few drinks the night before, that's actually just the effect of alcohol. There's nothing miraculous about that. It's not something that you have to give yourself any therapy about. This is just a toxin having an effect on your body. So imagine knowing that, and imagine going, actually, I don't have to talk it to a psychologist. All I need to do is drink less. I mean, sometimes we just think, I'll have my drink, then I'll speak to a psychologist, then I'll work through all my issues. Well, if you're introducing the problem, just remove the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Just taking that break, like you
Yeah.
said, in your case, you took a year off and you were able to see all of these benefits just in your own life. And I think if we can be that courageous to say, okay, I'm going to set a certain amount of time. Maybe it's not a year, maybe it's 6 months or something like that. Maybe start off with a manageable goal. Maybe it's that dry month that you were talking about. While that may not be as long term as you might think, at least it's a start, right? And then you get to the end of that month and maybe you can extend it a little bit and realize it's not that bad.
Yeah, and I guess I learned a heap about the whole process because in my day, alcohol was under the disease model. And I had to really think about, well, my dad was a heavy drinker. Am I that person? Am I in the disease category? Is this something? Am I just going am destined to be an alcoholic? And then I guess by taking some time off, you also immerse yourself a little bit in the literature because it does help you get through it. So you might listen to podcasts on it, or you might listen to people in the sober community, and you start to pick up nuggets of information. You start to realize, actually, no, there's something called the harm reductions model. And that's all about, as you mentioned, just taking it step by step. If you want to reduce to just one drink as opposed to four, then do that. And I think we just gloss over that option. And I think it's a really good option. I still think for me, longer term made a difference. And I'll explain why I thought that was better, was you can grit your way through three weeks. You can just hold on fast and just wait for that day where you can finally have your glass of wine. But when you make it, okay, well, there's no foreseeable end to this, like whatever that end might be for you, it might just be 3 months, you suddenly have to really change habits. And so I had to change habits over seasons. So, for example, I started in December, so that's summer here. And so that was actually fairly easy for me because I just switched to a non-alc beer because beer is not my drink of choice. And I found that less triggering than having a non-alc wine because non-alc wine just didn't do the trick. So if you're gonna do this, pick something that's actually not your preferred drink because you'll otherwise get frustrated by the non-alc options because they're not going to do what you want them to do. They are not alcohol. So that, and then suddenly the other little problem that sort of crept in was time. Suddenly I had time. When you on a Sunday, you have your glass of wine at lunch because why wouldn't you? It's the weekend. Then you kind of numb the rest of the afternoon. You can sit in front of the TV for hours, or you can, I don't know, be around the pool, or you can be really quite mm, quite boring. And when you're not drinking, right, suddenly you go, shit, I've got all this time on my hands. Now what? So now you have to actually do something. So you just start to change your habits. You might go for a walk or little things like other problems I had was triggers, right? So it's Friday, 5 p.m. Yay, it's the weekend. How do I celebrate? Well, I'm not going anywhere. Well, that was COVID related too. So I guess I was lucky in that wasn't forced to go anyway. But even so, my go-to was open a bottle of wine and dinner. Dinner, I couldn't cook without making a glass of wine, having a glass of wine while I cooked. So yes, a short-term break, absolutely. There's benefits to it, but I actually think you're gritting your way through the hardest part and not reaping many benefits, because those first 2 weeks, you do actually go through some withdrawal. It might not be massive withdrawal, but you definitely withdraw. And you have some anxiety about what you do. You feel a bit like lost. And so all those things only come from when you reinvent your life a little bit. And so when I talk about seasons, winter came. So now I was well versed in, okay, I have a non-alc beer in summer. Great. Winter came and I was like, oh, non-alc beer, cold. Why would I do that? Yeah, it suddenly didn't hit the spot. So I had to reinvent that. And so I went to mulled wine, which is heated wine with cinnamon and those kinds of flavors to get the heat of the alcohol, because obviously that's what I was looking to warm myself up. So just learning what works for you. These are things that I just did intuitively for me. Like, I'm not sure I could have found that in any textbook, but the fact that it then related to what I'd studied and what I know is true. My sleep, I was terrible. I wake up at 3 o'clock every single night, just the way it was. And so suddenly after, I'd say it took me 2 months, I slept the whole night, woke up like bright as a button. I was like, what the hell? That's just different. So no one told me, Kirsten, you're going to feel better. Well, even if they did, I'm not sure I would have believed them. So only when you do it yourself do you go, "Oh, wow, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe the textbooks are right."
Well, right. And I think to your point, you do need to almost go through a bit of suffering in some aspects of life to really enjoy the benefits of whatever it is that you just suffered through. Right. So
Yeah.
in this case, yeah, you can grit and bear it for a few weeks. Yeah, it'll probably suck a little bit, but you can get through it. And by the time you get through it, oh, finally I can have this drink. And it's just like
Correct.
you almost just forget about the last few weeks of just suffering through it. And then you get right back to the position where you were, and you don't really get a chance to see all of the benefits that come from it. And so maybe I think you're right with that extended period of time, where that longer time period, you really do need to look at your own behaviors and change some of those behaviors. And small little changes like switching it from a glass of wine to a non-alcoholic beer, that is a change that allowed you to just recondition yourself, right? It seems
Mm.
like.
Yeah, and I think the process was, again, because I don't subscribe to abstinence only model, there was another learning in that I had to then figure out, well, if I now drink, am I going to relapse? There's that terrifying word. Am I in that category that now that I've done this whole year, am I going to just undo all the hard work? Am I just going to go back to square one? And that was a little terrifying, given I really thought of my dad as an alcoholic in the first place. And so I thought, am I really taking a chance? Should I just stay on and not drink? Or that's what the sober community tells you to do in a lot of ways. Just stick with it because you found this glory thing. Now stick with it. And unfortunately, I still like a glass of wine. So I really didn't want to do that. I felt like I'd done my time and I'd done a really good chunk of it. So now I wanted to see what I would look like reintroducing alcohol. I think the great news about that is for me, and it's been, what has it been, 6 months? Yeah, 6 months now. And no, I haven't relapsed. I do drink and I can really do it moderately. So I think the biggest message for me is everyone's an individual. Don't believe that you are necessarily going to go all the way backwards. Have the courage to try. If I did go back and I did find it just as bad as before and I was going back to drinking a bottle a night, I probably would think that's a bad idea and I probably would have to look at stopping. But now I literally do we've got some great, so non-alc champagne is one of my other go-tos. And so I might have a glass of that and then I'll have my 2 glasses of wine at dinner and then that's it. Or if I'm entertaining, I might open a bottle of non-alc red because everyone loves to see the host with a glass of wine, or at least that's my experience, right? You just seem friendlier. You're just not the nerd. It was like, if Kirsten wasn't drinking, she's just not going to be any fun. So to get away from all of that, I would welcome people at the door with my glass of red. It happened to be a non-alc. No one's going to ask you what's in the glass. So I'd have my non-alc. And then when we sat down for dinner, I do love the beautiful red with my dinner. And so I would then happily, as the red wine was being poured, offer up my glass for that. And then I was only having 2 glasses of wine, but everyone else would perceive that I was, I don't know, having 4, whatever it was. Didn't really matter what other people thought. I knew what I was doing, and I knew that this was working for me. And I think age has another great part of my life. I'm heading for 50 now. And so after 2 glasses, I'm tired. I want to send you lot home. Like, I'm done. Thanks very much for coming over, but I'm now ready to send you home. So those 2 glasses allowed me to be less cranky in my old age. And so I really am thrilled that I've found the balance. And I fully understand that there are those that cannot do that. But I just think if we say that that's the way it is, you have to abstain, I think fewer people will try it. And that would be a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you use the key word there, and that's balance and finding
Yeah.
how to enjoy the alcohol in certain drinks every once in a while, but not make it the focal point of the evening. It's just,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to have a glass or maybe 2, and that's okay. But you don't need to finish off the whole 6 pack of beer in one sitting or whatever, or have several bottles of wine or whatever your drink of choice might be, right?
And you learn so much. I mean, I did learn because I started drinking, as I mentioned, at 15. So I really had to ask myself going to a party whether I actually would have fun, or whether I actually could chat to people, or whether I would feel anxious and awkward. So if you then walk in, and it's funny, you can almost just run with other people's drinking. And so as the mood picks up, there's always that awkward moment when you walk into a house. Have you ever felt that, where it's kind of just in the beginning, it's just kind of like, oh, this is strange. And normally that would be my, where's that wine moment? Whereas if you actually wait and you just pour yourself the non-alc, so no one's thinking you're not drinking, you pour yourself the non-alc, you stand there, everyone's feeling a bit awkward. As soon as they get a bit tipsy, your night improves because the conversation flows anyway. So you'll be amazed what you can enjoy without actually drinking yourself. I actually did New Year's without drinking. You'd think that would be an absolute failure. I danced and I kept going, look at me, check it out, girl, you're dancing and it's New Year and you're stone cold sober. So you can surprise yourself, because if you've always just thought, I drink, I socialize, how do you ever know any different if you don't try it?
Right. Because that sort of becomes part of and
Correct.
your who you perceive yourself to be, right? When you see yourself as this type of person who goes out and they drink to have a good time and everything, that just is who you are. And so, of course, you can't change that, because if you do, then that's really a blow
It's
to the
scary.
or right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would be
If you've done it since you're 15, which is kind of how I grew up, is there any alternative? Like, can I do this? So these are little social experiments. I just encourage people to try, because I think bravery is about stepping out of what you know. And even if it seems it just seems like such a tiny thing, it actually, you learn so much about yourself. You feel so much more confident, and you just go, why did I never know this? And it's just because you've just redone the same thing over and over again.
right. And that's the definition of insanity when you do the same thing over and over and expect different results and nothing changes.
Exactly. Exactly
Um,
right.
So when you introduce something new like this, like a non-alcoholic option, uh, it makes sense that things are going to probably change, and most likely it's going to change for the better. And you might find yourself feeling better, sleeping better, clearer thinking, just
Yeah,
overall
what's
better
to
mood.
lose, right?
Right, exactly. Like so what? So you don't get to have that particular drink all the time. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And quite frankly, I think it's probably even better off when you look at it that way. So I know there's probably some people out there, some of the listeners who might be in that position where they don't want to drink, but they also feel uncomfortable being the only person in the group who isn't drinking, who just has a Coke or some soda option or something like that. But with this, there's so many options now that are quote unquote adult beverages, right?
Mhm.
The alcohol with the alcohol removed, as far as wines and beers and even the spirits too. There are non-alcoholic versions of those. Could you talk a little bit about the progress that this non-alcoholic industry has made over the years.
Look, I've probably only been it in the last year and it's just skyrocketed. I can tell you that. So when I started, there were a few non-alc options available in Australia and many of them, funny, I don't know what made me think this, but I actually looked for non-alc options in the supermarket. Why would I think high quality non-alc options would be there? I guess you just don't walk into a bottle shop because why would you? That's where alcohol lives, right? So for a start, it's moved from the few options in the sort of local supermarkets to the bigger brands really looking at this and taking notes. So one of our big liquor stores is called Dan Murphy's, and they have actually just recently opened up a pop-up store locally just to check it out. And I think that speaks volumes because a few months ago, or 6 or 8 months ago, those options weren't available. Big companies like that weren't actually doing anything like that. And of course, the bigger distilleries and so Four Pillars have just announced a non-alc option. And I think, like anything, until there's a demand, the choices will never be there. And also the quality has to still improve. So non-alc beers, I think, have done an awesome job. And I think non-alc spirits as well. I think non-alc wines still have a way to go because the process of removing the alcohol from the wine, I don't know if it's not because it's been the top wineries who've chosen to do this. And so therefore, if you're dealing with a mediocre brand, you might just get a mediocre option or what. But until there's the demand, the bigger players aren't going to try it. And I think maybe there's been some snobbery around de-alcoholizing wine. Why would you do that? But I think the more we do change, just like the vegan community, suddenly there are options in veganism or gluten-free products. And I've seen the non-alc space in the same way. And I know that it's growing and I know that it's I know the numbers are there to show that people are actually really interested in this. And interesting with my children, that generation are far more aware of health, I think, than I was. And so smoking was another back in the day thing. And this generation isn't into that as much. And so drinking, they can also take it and leave it. And I think that's great. And I think one of my biggest issues was that when I wasn't drinking, I would rock up to a gorgeous restaurant, and we're talking high-end restaurants, and I'd have to turn to the kiddie menu for a drink. And then I'd get my glass in a thick, one of those nasty thick glasses with a straw, mind you. And I was just like, no, this has got to change. And so I'm very pleased to see that that is changing, that those non-alc options, there were always those people that were athletes or pregnant or didn't want to drink. And why did they suffer so long? Maybe because they were just a small community. But I'm behind all of those guys now. And I'm saying, I just want to rock up and I want to be able to say, oh, look, I'll choose a non-alc first, and then I'll have a wine, an alcoholic beverage after that. And I was really pleased on the weekend to go to a restaurant that did that. And then again, I just dropped off some options at another little restaurant, and she was telling me how much they do non-alc cocktails. And it's just become something we talk about where we absolutely did not talk about it in the past. You actually had to have a problem if you were not going to drink.
Yeah, and that's what it seems like is that back then, growing up, it's like, okay, if someone wasn't drinking, it's probably because they had a problem with alcohol. And it was looked at like, oh, okay, well, let's tiptoe around
Poor
this
you.
subject. Yeah, exactly.
Poor you. You have a shitty evening. We'll carry on. And when I stopped drinking to fall pregnant, I mean, it was just straight up, oh, Kirsten's not drinking, she's pregnant. Like it wasn't even, it was just everyone knew Kirsten drinks. And so it's just lovely that you don't have to do that. And I don't even want it to be a discussion at all. I just want it to be, oh, look, I've picked that. And then later I'll pick that. So it's just a non-issue in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, exactly. And when it looks like an actual alcoholic beverage in a wine glass or in something like that, as opposed to a Coke glass, it becomes less of an issue because it just looks like the real thing. And then who cares? No one's gonna question it or anything, right? And
And we have, sorry, carry on.
no, go ahead. Good. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
We have to acknowledge that the alcohol industry is a marketing genius, right? So they have made alcohol the fun, the pool party, the holiday in Bali. And so suddenly we can still have all that marketing We just won't be doing as much damage. So I love the fact that we can say, and it is a bit sad that we feel like we can't party without a glass, but I do love the fact that I can have my glass of red and it may not contain alcohol, but I look as just as fun as everyone else. No one is going, oh, in her glass, in that photograph, that's non-alcoholic. It's just not there. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. And you mentioned people when they're pregnant that they obviously are looking for a non-alcoholic option. And it's funny, when my wife was pregnant with one of our kids, I forget which one now, but she looked at me one night and she said that she wanted to have a drink. Obviously she didn't because of being pregnant and everything, but just she just wanted to have a drink together,
Yeah.
just the two of us at home, right? So the next day I went to the liquor store. I looked around to see what options they had, see if they had anything. There's a small section. They had a few non-alcoholic wines. I think it was only like three, maybe four options. And I bought every option that
Every
they had,
variety, just in case.
every variety. She appreciated the effort, but it just turns out that, like you said, it just wasn't quite there. And maybe it was because it was from a mediocre winery that it just wasn't that great of an option. I don't know. But it's encouraging to know that there are other options that are out there now. And this was over 10 years ago. So I'm sure so much has
Oh, yeah,
changed
yeah.
in that time period. But th- just so much has changed, and that there are those options out there for people who want to give this a try and want to have something that is non-alcoholic. And it's also encouraging to hear you talk about going to restaurants. Now restaurants are carrying stuff that is in the non-alcoholic realm, where before that just wouldn't be a possibility. You'd either have a Coke or an iced
Yeah.
tea or a glass of water, and those were your non-alcoholic options, right?
Well, that's right. I never like Coke. I don't like sweet drinks. And so cocktails were lovely, but they're sweet. I mean, I don't want a juice when I'm having a dinner. And so the fact that you can have more tart flavors, or we call them adult flavors, but also the fact that you can sip something. You don't actually order something to drink a liquid. You would just have a water then, right? If you're thirsty, drink water. This is just sipping on something and just enjoying that sort of process of having a tasty mouthful of liquid, not a sweet, bubbly drink. Like, it's just a completely different thing. And so, yeah, it's really lovely that this has now become a thing. And the other thing I want to add is that when you take some time off alcohol, and in fact, in pregnancy too, your palate actually changes. So you actually, the funny thing happened. So my husband and I decided to crack open a nice bottle, of course, to celebrate this year of you've done it now. And like every person does, we celebrate with an alcohol. It was not any different to that. And we drank the first, and we both looked at each other and we went, no, this wine has turned. This is not a good bottle, right? So we stared at the bottle and we thought, no, that's really not right. We poured it out and we thought, okay, we'll try one more. I mean, that must have just been a bad bottle. True. Okay, I won't swear, but honestly, the second bottle tasted just as foul. We had to reintroduce our palates to alcohol. It's a really strong flavor. If you haven't had it for a while, you actually quite like the more subtle flavors and I guess the adult flavors, the peppers, or if you're talking about a gin, the juniper, those flavors are actually often drowned out by a really strong alcohol taste. So don't underestimate, your palate will change, and that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. And you may actually come to find that you enjoy the non-alcoholic version even better if you give it a
Correct.
chance, right?
The first thing I noticed was after one glass, I was sleepy. Like, I was just like, oh, nap time. So that's when you're not used to it, you suddenly realize that, is it great to be sleepy 24/7? I'm not sure.
No, probably not. And it affects your sleep as well in a negative way. Like you mentioned how you would wake up at 3 in the morning almost every night, and then you find yourself sleeping throughout the whole night. So for the people who are out there listening who are struggling with getting a good night's sleep, sleeping through the night, think about what you did the night before. Were you drinking the night before? Maybe that's part of the problem. And you might be able to solve a lot of these problems just by taking a look at your own behaviors and maybe just make small changes.
Yeah, and bringing it back to the psychology of it, there's three things that we need as humans. We need to eat well, we need to sleep well, and we need to exercise. When I was drinking, I didn't exercise as much. When I was drinking, I definitely didn't sleep as well. And when I was drinking, I probably ate a lot of bad food to counteract the sugar. So You just think one of the few things I used to say to my clients, because obviously I dealt with kids a lot, and the parents would come to me and go, "What do I do? My child's depressed, my child's anxious." And I'd always start with those three things. Okay, how well are they sleeping? What are they eating? And are they exercising? Because you don't need to talk to me until those three things are covered. And so think about it. If alcohol is affecting the very fundamentals that we need as humans, why are we still doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just a great point. It makes it pretty clear that if we are having some of these problems, really we should look into ourselves and see what we're doing. Not just with alcohol. There could be other things that we're doing too to ourselves that are causing us to not sleep well or to not exercise or to be depressed or whatever. We could be causing some of these problems ourselves. And sometimes we are our own worst enemies, and we can definitely solve some of these problems by just taking a deep look inside of ourselves and saying, "Hey, what is it that I'm doing
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
affect this?" Right. So where can people go to learn more about the things that you do and the non-alcoholic beverage options that are available to them now?
Well, I'm on two sort of sides of things. On the one side, there's Point Zero Cellars. So I'm pretty much on Instagram or anywhere. If you type in Point Zero Cellars, you'll find me there. But I just call myself psychologist Kirsten on Instagram. So that's more focused on the taking the break thing. I try to run a couple of free programs for the 30 days just for people to give it a go, but I also do counseling in that space because traditionally that was always the addiction space. And I really want people to know that they can just do this themselves. It's super easy to just give it a go. It's so worth it. You might need a bit of a coach or a mentor. You don't feel like you need to see a psychologist, but I do think that with telehealth available now, you can log into someone, chat to someone, and just make it that much easier to maybe get you through day 14 that you really, really can't get through yourself. So some support without feeling like you've got a mental health disorder is really a good space, I think, and should become more and more mainstream. So I'm trying to work in that space a little bit.
Well, I think that's great. And I think it's an awesome option for people who want to give it a try and might need that little bit of help that you were talking about there. So I will definitely have links to all of this in the show notes for anyone who wants to take a look. And then I'll also try to link to some non-alcoholic brands that people can take a look at as well. So that way
Yeah, it's a great
they
idea.
realize that there are those options out there. So just take a look for the listeners, take a look at those in the show notes. Kirsten, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and share your story and everything that you're doing in this space with me and my listeners. So thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, it's been really cool. Thank you so much. And I wish everyone, all your listeners, all the very best. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Drive On Podcast.